Alright, so this is going to be my updated tier list video. In my last tier list video, I've had a ton of opinion changes since that video, and this will be a longer video. And a bunch of these mice have been updated, so I felt like it was only right to do an updated tier list video. So we're gonna start with the Aerox 3. This is an A tier mouse now. They've updated the build quality on it. Everything has been updated. It is just a very good mouse now. The Air 58 is gonna go in horrid tier, I think now. It's just a terrible buy now. Why would you spend that much money for a mouse like that now? There's just no point. Um, and the burst core is gonna go in C tier, I think. It is, I think, $30 now, or it's still $30, but I think there's just better mice at that price range. So for that, it's gonna go in C tier. But the Burst Pro is gonna go in B tier. This is a very good mouse for people that think that the XM1 is too aggressive and the S2 is too outdated. So the Burst Pro is a perfect shape for that. The CM600 is gonna go in horrid tier. There is an updated one of this mouse from a different company. It's like the Team Wolf something, but it's not on this list. But that mouse would be like in the B to A tier territory. The N1 is going to go in C tier. It is a palm gripping dream from what I've heard, but I do not palm grip, so I'm going to put it in C tier. The Death Adder V2 Mini is going to go in horrid. It was just a failed shape. Why would you make the Death Adder that small? There's just no point. Same with the Death Adder V2. There's just better ergo mice out now. EC2 is or EC series is also going to go in horrid. FK series is going to go in C tier. And so is the CA series. No, not horrid. C tier. These are very outdated. You will have to do a bunch of modding, and then they will be in like a B tier. And the only reason I'm putting these two categories of mice or shapes of mice, the FK2 and the ZA13, every other FK shape besides the FK2 and every other ZA shape besides the ZA13 really is just not worth even using. The ZA13 is like 77 grams and the FK2 is like 78. So they're still fine weights. It's just more about the stock performance than it is the mouse in general. So for that, I'm going to put them in C tier. The G Pro X is going to be our first S tier mouse. I don't think it necessarily deserves S tier yet, but just because it is a 60-gram wireless mouse from a shape that everybody loves, personally, I do not like the shape. I think it's too high profile for me, or the hump is too large and it's just too straight for me. But I think it is still an S tier mouse. The G203 is still a B tier mouse. It hasn't really been $15 anymore, so for that I'm going to put it in B tier. It's hovering around 30 to 45. That's the normal price of it, depending on what color you get. So for that, G305 is going to go in horrid. The only time you should ever buy a G305 now is if you have to PCB mod or make another mouse wireless. That's the only time you should ever buy one. Horrid for G402, horrid for G502. I still think G402 is just a better G502. The shape is nicer. The buttons are better. I think even the cable is better. So I think the G502 is just useless. And the scroll wheel is a lot better than the G402 in my opinion. G Pro Hero is going to go in F tier. This thing still goes for like $65. And the G203 goes for like 15 to 30. They're the same shape. I don't know why they even have this mouse still on the market. G Pro Wireless is also going to go in horrid. There is no point in buying a G Pro Wireless unless you are like an office person and don't want to deal with like a mouse you know might have a few issues. Like in the long run, because we haven't really seen the G Pro X in the long run. Some people have said it's having coding issues. It's having some click issues. So if you're just like an office person or don't game much, I would get a G Pro Wireless over G Pro X. But if you actually game, just get a G Pro X. The Pulsefire Haste is gonna be an A tier mouse. I think the hype has died over a little bit for it, but it's still an A tier mouse. You don't have to change the cable out. You don't have to do anything to it. The shape is perfect. Not perfect. It's gonna be good for I think everybody really. And I have pretty small hands, and I could even use it really nicely. So, hot yes. And then we're gonna get to the M42. The Hadi S is a very overrated mouse in my opinion, unless you fingertip, or fingertip into claw, I guess. But I think if you primarily claw, I think there are better options out there, just because it does have still some build quality issues on it, and the stock cable is pretty horrible, like really horrible. The side buttons aren't very good, so really all you're relying on is the shape and the weight. And the weight is really nice. When I had this mouse, I do miss the weight, but the shape was not my favorite. I definitely much prefer the Ultralight 2 shape, and I think they're very equal mice in that way, but I think the Ultralight 2 shape is just a little bit better. But the M42, I guess I'll get to it when I get to it. I don't know why I can't find it. So yeah, the Hadi is gonna go in F tier. There's just no point of getting a Hadi anymore. There's just so many G Pro wireless clones out that there's no point. Oh, here's the M42. This is a C tier mouse. Everybody overhyped this like crazy. This is the most overhyped, overrated mouse out. The cable is so bad it coils. It turns into a coiled cable. The clicks are just on 20 Ms. They have some travel. The scroll wheel is nice. The side buttons are not the best, and the shape is really where it goes down, I think, for me. The idea of having two different shapes is nice. The way that they did it is terrible. When you have the lower hump, you feel these little goalposts right in the side of your hand here, right here, where my cursor is, and then the middle is just dips down. But then when you put the higher hump on, you just feel like this really sharp thing in the middle, and then the sides dip down. There's no win-win with the shape at all, unless you have huge hands and you fingertip, because the mouse is still a little bit long for fingertip compared to a bunch of these other mice. So yeah, I don't find it good for any grip, and I think the specs are still terrible with it, and the feet are horrible. The HSK is gonna go in B tier. The HSK is a fingertip only mouse. You are not going to be able to claw this no matter how small your hands are. There are no side buttons. It's fingertip only. It reminds me a lot of the M1K, which is here, and is made by G-Wolves, and the pre-copies weren't very good, but the shape for people that do fingertip is like basically endgame. Like endgame is a fake thing. Like you're never going to have an endgame mouse. But for people that only fingertip, I think this is going to be the closest you get to endgame that there is really for fingertip. So for that, it's going to go in B tier. It's not even out yet. There was just pre-review samples, and then they're sending out more samples soon. So you can go on like G-Wolf's Twitter, and like they'll do like a sign-up thing or whatever for samples. The Kane 200 is actually going to go in C tier. So this mouse is really weird. I did a little bit of research on this because I was just bored. And it is a very heavy mouse, and the feet are terrible. But the scroll wheel apparently is extremely nice on this mouse. And the clicks are absolutely insane. They have zero travel. When I tell you they have zero pre or post travel, it's just how the click was meant to be. Like, it's absolutely insane. So if you need like an office mouse, or you jitter click for a living, this would be a good mouse. The KPU is an A tier mouse. I hated the shape at first, but the shape encoding is just absolutely insane on the KPU. It's still one of my favorite shapes to this day. And the side buttons are also very good, and the scroll wheel is also very, very good. The clicks are kind of the downside. They do have a little bit of post travel when clicking up at the top, but if you click on the switch, they're perfectly fine. Except mine did double click, but they have 50 Ms, and their return policy is amazing. Like, they are just amazing. The M4 is going to go in C tier. I think it's basically a better, I think it's better than the M42. But it still has a ton of build quality issues, and the side buttons are actually really good. I was very surprised by the side buttons. They're very big, and they have no post-travel or pre-travel, really. They're very, very good. And the shape is just too unsafe to recommend to most people, but for me, who claws, this is a very, very nice ergo shape. Probably one of the only ergo shapes besides the KPU I've really enjoyed. The Matar is going to go in F tier. It's just a cheap mouse. I think Boardsy reviewed, I think, and the build quality was terrible. The Mira, horrid. It's just everything about HK mice are just horrible. The MM710, horrible. The MM720, B tier. The MM720 is a very weird shape. This was a clone of one of their older shapes, I believe. And this is a very good mouse. The structural integrity is very good. I've not seen many people have build quality issues with it. The switches are just V1 Razer opticals, basically. They're developed by the same company. But it's really a shape thing. It's such an interesting shape. And there's no build quality issues with it, that it goes in B tier. The D minus, the Model D, the Model O minus, and the Model O all go in horrid tier. They have not updated the build quality in these mice. It doesn't matter how good the shape is. The Model O minus, if the Model O minus had Model O wireless build quality, this would be probably an A tier mouse. But they just have not updated the build quality. I don't know if they're waiting for the Model O minus wireless or something, but they just need to update the build quality. And even going onto the Model O wireless, it's still gonna hit B tier. The shape, it's at this point, it's just a budget Viper Ultimate. They're basically the same shape. The Model O wireless is a tiny bit longer, but they're both FK1 clones. And yeah, there's no point of getting a Model O wireless when the Viper Ultimate is on sale for like $96, I think, sometimes. And the Model O wireless, still, the build quality is not very good. People have had more issues in the batches that are coming out later than they did in the first batches, which is kind of concerning. So yeah, and people have had squeaky scroll wheels still, and squeaky clicks, and they've developed some wobble on the clicks, and side buttons have like broken on some people. So for that, it's still going to go in B tier. The Naos is going to go in Booga mouse tier. This is the worst mouse I think that has been developed. They didn't even apply the shell to the bottom of the mouse correctly and tried to sell it for $70. I don't know if they fixed that, but it was supposed to be an S1 clone or S2 clone, and they didn't even put the shell on the bottom of the mouse right. It had like gaping holes where you could see the click because they didn't line the shells up correctly, and the travel on some people's was just horrible. Like, it was the most amount of travel I've ever seen on a mouse click. And the S2 is going to go in C tier, right with these. It would be in B tier, but the GameSense mouse is coming out. If you don't know what that is, you can go on Twitter and look up GameSense, and you'll find their Twitter. They have a mouse coming out, and it's an S2 clone. It does have hot swappable switches, so you can change the switches in and out to whatever switches you want. But we haven't seen that mouse yet, really. Like, we haven't seen publicly the durability and everything. So, yeah, for that, it's going to go, the S2 is going to go in C tier. The NPO1 is going to go in B tier. The only thing that throws people off is the weight. Voice crack. The weight. But I think if you can get over the weight, this is a B tier mouse. The clicks are insane. It's really just a performance mouse. Everything is on board, which I really enjoy. Mice having onboard settings instead of having software. It just makes everything so much easier. The side buttons are very good. If you like Zowie mice, you will like Vaxi mice. The NPO1 is right. It's like an improved Zowie mouse, basically. The scroll wheel is 24 steps instead of 16 on the Zowie mice, and some people still prefer the Zowie scroll wheel, but the NPO1 is just, I think, an improved Zowie mouse in my opinion. The Ponage Ultra Custom is going to go in B tier. It's an EC2 clone that's wireless, and you can interchange the back and the front shells, so you can make it whatever color you want. You can literally just take the back shell off, replace it with a blue one or a purple one or whatever color they sell. So that is very nice. All these SteelSeries mice are going to go in in Horrid. I don't really need to explain it. The Viper Mini is going to go in A tier. Still, nothing beats it at its price range. I don't care what you bring up. Nothing beats it at its price range. Viper C tier. It's just a wired Viper Ultimate at this point. They updated the feet, but there's no point in getting a Viper over the Viper 8K Hertz. So, the Skull Mini, Horrid. The Skull is going to go in C tier. The Skull Mini, I've talked to so many people, and they've all said the same thing. It just doesn't hold up over time. It just doesn't. Like, everybody I've talked to, it's like the design of the shell or something. it just fails, or they have inconsistent clicks, or one of their clicks stop working, or their side buttons stop working, or the scroll wheel makes like this clicky sound. Yeah, pretty bad. In the skull, if you have huge hands and you need a palm grip mouse, this is really going to be one of your only options. This is a huge mouse. Like, I'm pretty sure it's bigger than the EC1, which is pretty insane. That they even managed to make it this weight at such a huge mouse. The XM1 is going to go in A tier. It dropped from S tier because they've been making way too many they've been really like trying to get everybody's money for this mouse. They made the XM1 V1, then they made the XM1 V2, then they made the XM1 RGB, then they made the XM1R, then they made the XM1R RGB. So they just need to stop with the XM1 shape. They need to go on to a different shape or something. They're really juicing this mouse to the point where it's just getting stale and people just don't even want it anymore. So for that, it's going to go to A tier. The Atom Palm Hydrogen, I don't know what they're doing with this mouse. Like, this was supposed to come out, like, I think months ago, like many months ago, and they just stalled and told people. They didn't say anything really. So we don't even know if it's coming out or not. The M1K is going to go in B tier right with the HSK. The M1K is like a $200, and you're not going to find this mouse under like $200. It doesn't have a scroll wheel, as you can see. It has a rubber cable, but the rubber cable is very, very good, and it's like 27 grams or 22 or something like that. It's insane. It's made out of carbon fiber. It uses Japanese Omrons, and I guess if you're a Kovacs player, it'd be fine, but I find no use if it doesn't have a scroll wheel. Like, most people now use like 60% keyboards, and I think if you don't have a scroll wheel, like, you're kind of stuck at that point. Like, you're not going to be able to use anything on your computer, really, unless you have a second mouse. But I would just get an HSK over the M1K when it releases, just because of the price difference. And the Aim Gods mouse, I'm going to put a new tier here, and that's going to be the Aim Gods mouse. The Aim Gods mouse is going to be $189 or $185, something like that. The price doesn't bother me. It's justified, in my opinion. The thing that bothers me is I was looking back at the sound tests, and I don't know how to feel about these clicks, and I don't know how to feel about the way that they did it anymore. I think the mouse itself, I don't know. It's a really hard thing to like justify, I guess you could say. I feel like it was a really big money grab, and I don't know. It's a really hard thing to do, because we know how the shape is going to be now, because HK released a Series M, which the shape, a lot of people said, yeah, it was a very nice shape, but it was like it was a solid shape. And the Ultralight 2 shape is obviously very good. But it is kind of like a refresh in a way for the Ultralight 2, and a lot of people don't need wireless, and it's going to be so limited that I just don't know how to feel about it. I don't even know if any of that made sense, but I just don't know how to feel about it. So for that, it's going to go in between A and S. I'm going to buy it, so when I get it, I will obviously make a review on it, and yeah, that's going to be the end of this video. Peace.